So firstly, I want to welcome everyone to this session at the Open Publishing Fest. We participate every year and it's a very interesting fest. It really is about everyone working in the open publishing space, and it's a very loosely organized fest. So everybody organizes their own sessions according to what they do and then kind of distribute it through their own network. But it's fun, and it's always people who are really interested in various aspects of open publishing who attend. So welcome and thank you for joining us. We're going to keep the session focused very much on how we advertise it. And we would like you all, firstly, just a little bit of housekeeping, to switch off to mute yourselves. You all are muted. If you unmute yourself by mistake, then one of us will mute you again, because we don't want barking dogs and tweeting birds and trucks that go by to disturb the presenter's train of thought. And then I think for the presenters, when you are talking, obviously cameras are on. Everyone is welcome to have their cameras on. It's nice to see who's in the room. But if for bandwidth issues, or just for, if you want to eat your sandwich while you're listening, you're welcome to also switch off your camera. Definitely the presenters will be on. The session is recorded because that's one of the things that the Open Publishing Fest asks us to do, and then it can obviously be disseminated afterwards to people who are interested but couldn't make the session. So I hope you're all fine with that. If you're not, you're going to have to leave because we have to record the session. Then, so firstly, I'd like to introduce the Bookdash team who's here. So my name is Dorette Lowe. I work at Bookdash and I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. For us, it is 11:05 in the morning. I know for other people, it's very different times, and thank you very much for making this space in your day or night to join us. Then we've got Julia and Zabe. Julia, perhaps you can just introduce yourself and wave.
Hi everyone, so lovely to be in a extended Bookdash community. Yeah, Julia, and work with Dorette and Zabe at Bookdash.
Yeah, and then Zabe.
Morning everybody and welcome. It's good to have you with us.
So the way that we're going to distribute the work between the three Bookdash people, also just to say that that is the whole Bookdash team that you've now met. There are three of us. So I'll take the first part of the session and give everybody a little bit of background about Bookdash. I think many of you already know, but I will zip through it so that we all have the same understanding. Then we're going to hand over to our two presenters who are going to share their stories of how they reuse Bookdash content or the Bookdash model. First up will be Aditi. If you can just introduce yourself and say hi.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Aditi. I'm joining from an organization called Freedom. We're based in India.
Yes. And then we've got Koen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Koen. I'm from the Netherlands, but I'm based in Papua New Guinea, mainly focusing on literacy.
Great. We had a third presenter who unfortunately is ill. Her name is Laika Kaji from Lebanon, but I will then, after Aditi, sorry for the pronunciation, I hope it's fine, and Koen, after they've shared their stories, I will share very briefly what Laika would have shared with you. And then throughout the presentations, please use the chat to ask questions or make comments. Because what we'll do after that is that Julia is going to be moderating the comments and looking at kind of common threads, perhaps, or interesting questions. And so after the presentations, we're going to have a space for interaction and discussion around the questions. If people in the room have something that they'd like to share about how they use the Bookdash content or model, that would be really useful. So we're going to try and keep it interactive. Zabe's job in this whole, in our session, is to prevent people from bombing the session, which is apparently something that sometimes happens on Zoom, is you get internet trolls who just join any old Zoom session that they want. But we've taken precautions, but like Zaid is our bodyguard. She'll just kick them out of the room and make sure that we can have useful conversation. Okay, so I think let me just get going with our presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Just go back to the beginning. I hope you can all see my screen. Yeah. Right. So the session is called The Power of Open Around the World with Book Dash. So I'm going to start by telling you what our vision is, and that is that every child should own 100 books by the age of 5. It looks like a lot of books when you, well, it sounds like a lot of books when you say it, but on that little bookshelf are 100 Book Dash books. So actually, it's not that many. And the reason why why this is our vision is that we know from research, there's a large body of international research, that owning books is a very effective intervention in addressing literacy problems in low-income communities. So unfortunately, in South Africa, 58% of all South African households do not own a single book for leisure reading. And these low levels of book ownership contribute to very low literacy levels countrywide. And these low literacy levels come at a huge cost for people individually, but also for the economy. And many studies have shown that improving levels of book ownership from an early age is a low-cost, high-impact way of addressing the problem. So by giving children high-quality, relevant books to own, that is associated with positive behavioral, educational, and psychological outcomes. So that's why we do what we do. However, most publishing models are not designed to create affordable, beautiful books for all, and that is where we come in. So Book Dash is a non-profit organization and a social impact publisher. So we exist to create new, affordable, beautiful, high-quality children's books, and then we work with others, like many of you in the room, to increase ownership and to address the many literacy problems that we experience. To do this, we developed a completely divergent publishing model. It's very different from mainstream publishing. It's a rapid content creation model where our books are created in a 12-hour event, which is called a Book Dash. So the organization takes its name from the actual event of content creation. And how it works is that 50 professional creative volunteers, like some of you in the room, gather in either physically in one room or they gather virtually. Our job as facilitators is then to guide the teams to produce 10 bright, beautiful, high quality, fun African storybooks in 12 hours. We usually produce 10, so there are 10 creative teams, and each creative team consists of an illustrator, a designer, a writer, and then we've got about 5 editors who work with 2 teams each. And it's quite magical because we start the Saturday morning with nothing, and 12 hours later we have 10 new books that we created on the day. And as you can see from that photograph, they're very beautiful, they're very different because people, it's not the same teams ever. And yeah, they're just wonderful. So we then publish all the books by using a Creative Commons open license. So we publish them on our website first, and they are then there free for anyone to read and reuse, to remix the content or to adapt it, to translate it, to change it. However, whatever they need to do for their own purposes, they can do with our books. So our philosophy of open access really has 3 elements to it. So firstly, our books are published under an open license. They're free to read, They also are on our website is also data free, so it costs nothing to read our books. You don't use data and you don't have to pay to read the books. Then our source files are open. You can literally click through from our website and download the source files, not just the PDFs or anything like that, but the open files, which means that you can change names of characters. You can put them in different clothes if you want to. You can rearrange the pages. You can do whatever you need to because you've got access to the source files. And then our model of content creation, the actual model of how to run a book dash and how to create this kind of beautiful content is also open, and anyone can replicate it because it's detailed in our book dash manual. So the power of this open license is the fact that it extends our reach far beyond what we would have been able to manage. It allows our books to travel to corners of the world that we've never heard of, or like Papua New Guinea, we've heard of it, but we're not entirely sure where on the map it is. And people use it for uses that we would never have been able to imagine. And what that does is it frees up the Book Dash team, which is a small team of 3 people that are all in the room today. And it frees us up to find funding to do the other part of the work that we think is so important, and that is to print physical copies of our books, and we distribute them to young children in South Africa. And so far we've distributed 1.9 million books, and if we're really lucky and a few things pan out, we will hit the 2 million books mark possibly before the end of the year. I wanted to share just a few examples of how people use the open license. So lots of communities do their own translations into a lot of different languages. Some of the languages are minority languages, so there are not a lot of resources in a particular language. And some languages like Norwegian, the story there is that it was a South African who studied in Norway and now lives there, and was a little bit disturbed when she saw the children's books that were available in Norway, all reflecting a very homogeneous society, where actually the Norwegian society that she saw around her was diverse. Children weren't all white Norwegian children, and yet the children's books didn't reflect that. And so she decided to start a very small company where she translated a few of our books, printed copies, and sold them into the trade, so that there's a little bit of representation in some of the children's books in Norway. Then another use of our books is that we've got reading platforms and apps, more than 100 that we know of, who actively republish our books. And then there are lots of adaptations for other media as well. We've got storytime channels and narrations on YouTube. We've got animations, we've got audiobooks, you name it, and that probably has been done with a Book Dash book. I wanted to tell you about 1 or 2 local South African uses of the open license. We've got so many wonderful distribution partners in South Africa who do fantastic work in communities. So I thought I would just lift out 3 as interesting examples of organizations who use our books. So both Shine Literacy and Tanda, 2 very different organizations. Shine Literacy focuses on grade 2 and 3 children, and Tanda is a community project in KwaZulu-Natal, and their program focuses on preschool children, this particular program. But both those organizations, during COVID and the lockdowns, realized that the children that they work with, usually in their institutions, have nothing at home. They have no resources. Learning will come to a complete standstill, and they needed to do something to support these children. And so both organizations used the Book Dash books to actually create a learning at home curriculum around the books. Very different, obviously, in the 2 organizations, but Tanda, the photograph on the slide is from Tanda, and what they did was to realize that the people looking after these young children at home now are often grannies and aunts, because the parents are away working in the city, and the grannies now suddenly have to be involved in the children's education and stimulation, and they don't really know how, and it's all a bit overwhelming. And so they at Tanda developed a program where very simple activities are drawn from the books or based on the books, and a family will receive a set of activities that includes activities for instance, the 2 to 3 year old age group, and then the 5 to 6 year old age group, because the granny often looks after several children and they're all at different age groups. And so by using one book, but differentiated age appropriate activities, the guardians felt very empowered to participate in their children's or in their wards stimulation and home education. So that was incredibly successful. And then just one other example that I want to pull out is that Dunlop, who is a very big tire manufacturer, and they've got a large factory in South Africa. They decided to record audio tracks for many of our books for a campaign that they were running around driver safety and getting home or getting to your destination safely. And so the idea was that the audio tracks would entertain the children, the audiobooks, and allow everyone to have a calm, restful, and fun journey. So very different kind of uses of our content. So we've invited 3 organizations today who use our open license books or our model to come and share their stories. So we're going to travel around the world. We're going to be starting in India, and then we're going to move to Papua New Guinea. And then, unfortunately, we can't really end in Lebanon. We'll end in Cape Town, where I will tell you about Lebanon, because Laika couldn't join us today. So, Aditi, are you ready to start talking? I'm going to mute myself, and then you're going to talk, and I will drive.
Great. Aditi has asked if Kun can possibly present first. She's just having network issues that she's going to sort out.
Okay. No problem. So then I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Kun, you can then take over.
Okay. I think you're all seeing my PowerPoint presentation. You're all hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. Good morning, good afternoon, or for us, good night from Papua New Guinea. I'm going to talk a little bit about the little team that I lead in Papua New Guinea called Education for Life. We've seen the little bookshelf idea of having 100 books for every child, which is very much also not the case in Papua New Guinea. And so instead of trying to bring libraries of books that were printed, we decided to focus on ebooks, and that's what we've been doing for the last 5 years. We're part of SIL, which is a global organization with 5,000 volunteers working all across the world. We probably have more than 100 volunteers working here in Papua New Guinea. Just to make a clear picture of where Papua New Guinea is, it's just above Australia, bordering the other side of the island being Indonesia. And one big thing that most people don't know about Papua New Guinea is that we are the world record holder of languages. And so we have over 830 languages, which present humongous problems for education and for books and whatnot. A typical elementary school at a village level, which of course in terms of how it all looks is one thing, but then research done by Save the Children showed that 97% of the elementary schools in Papua New Guinea have no library whatsoever. So all these children are reading is whatever the teacher is able to scribble on the blackboard. When I started Education for Life 5 years ago, I found this bit of research from Mr. Abadzi from Africa, and basically coming very close to Book Dash's goals. These children need to practice reading but none of them do. So more research was that 40% of the children that we have leaving grade 2 can still not count to 50. And 40% of these same children cannot identify a single word of English, even though it's our national language. So what we try to do is we try to change things with Bloom. Bloom is a software package that you can freely install on your computer, and that allows you to create books for print, but also books that you then push to your own phone or tablet with the free Bloom Reader application. Then on top of that, we put together a kit, which we labeled the Teacher Presenter Kit. And we pushed in a Bluetooth speaker, a projector, one solar panel, and a phone. The phone then holds the wonderful books from Book Dash, the books from the government curriculum, and many, many others. And in that way, we bring a whole library to the school. And as you can see in this picture, the teacher is reading from the screen, but at the same time, he is holding a phone in his hand with all the books on it. Here is a 10-second illustration. So this was the Sepik province of Papua New Guinea. Okay, a little bit about Book Dash and Bloom. Like some of you know, the Book Dash books have traveled all the way to Nepal already, also through the Bloom application. It recently traveled all the way to Kyrgyzstan, which is a neighboring country to Russia. And then it made its way into Malaysia. And as you can see, the Bloom application allows for all these funny scripts that these countries need. I recently found this translation from Africa on Book Dash's website. And so it was a matter of copy pasting, and that's where we had a Sesotho version of this wonderful book. And this is our trade language, Tok Pisin, also a pidgin English, which is used very much in schools. Here is another wonderful use for the Book Dash books, is we bring the books to deaf children by adding a sign language video container to it. Okay, so a quick demo. Here is a typical Book Dash book being played in the Bloom player. This can be online, this can be on your laptop, and this can be on your own device. And then it will look like this.
Who is our friend? Can you guess who our best friend is? He's not like us at all.
Ina plitoki mi usat emi number one friend blong mipla. Emi no one kind awesome mipla.
Our best friend is Bird. I am Rhino. I get covered in fleas. Bird eats them all up.
Okay, and then maybe very quickly, a very similar demonstration, but then with sign language in the same book. And I think I have shown you many things of how we have been able to reuse many of the books, mainly on the Bloom platform. The platform Bloom is used in probably over 60 countries already. We currently have books translated in 426 languages. And so that basically shows our interest in serving not just the majority languages, but also minority languages. So the fact that Bookdash is even willing to share their source files is beneficial for a team like us, being able to take the InDesign files and being able to pull data and pictures from the PDFs. But then for a local team out in the village of Papua New Guinea, that is not, because they cannot afford those kind of softwares. Bloom is free, and Bloom can be taught in 2 hours. And that's when people are able to take basically our templates and turn them into their language. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Gun. That is so fascinating, and it's lovely to see footage of, you know, how your adaptation and the use of the Bookdash books, how it's used in actual classrooms. I think I've got so many questions, but I'll keep that for our discussion afterwards. Aditi, are you ready? Okay,
Yes.
so I'll share my screen again, and then you can do the talking.
Sure. Hi, everybody again, and thank you, Kun, for your support. Good afternoon. I'm Aditi from an organization called Stones to Milestones, and we're about 13 years old. We're based in India with a single mission of creating a nation of readers. India, as you know, perhaps has as many unofficial languages as Papua New Guinea has, but we have only a few official languages. And English is the medium of education for most of our children. It's also the medium. It's also the language of aspiration. It's the language of careers. And children are not able to read at grade level at all. And the data is very similar to what Kun showed us at a PNG level. And when we started 13 years ago, our effort was to create ways in which children can read in English with both will and skill, to create the purpose and pleasure for reading, especially in young children who are below 12 years of age. Because once you're a reader, by the time you're 9, you can read a text independently with fluency. You're kind of set up for academic success. You're set up for success in your career, and you're also it's difficult to not love reading after you've kind of fallen in love with it, right? So we started off working with schools, and about 5 years ago, we introduced our mobile application called Freedom, FREADOM, Freedom, because reading sets you free, and it's a combination of the words read and freedom. So freedom. I'm experiencing a bit of a lag. Especially when it comes to talking about reading in India, what we've discovered is there was no way to make it matter, because what is essential is really invisible to the eye. All of us know it's very crucial for children to read well, to be able to decode text, to be able to comprehend text independently. But in a country like ours, it's very easy for parents to pay more attention to, say, mathematics or science, without understanding that if you're not able to read, you won't be able to do anything else as well. So we had to do a lot of work to kind of make it visible. And we've done work to make reading visible through data and through gamification. And that's where technology has really and absolutely supported us, especially on Freedom. So through Freedom, we're changing the way Indian families spend time together. The mobile application is designed to be used by parents and children together for 10 to 15 minutes a day, doing something magical around reading. You can either read a story, you can watch a video story, you can listen to an audio story, you can play games, or you can do activities around reading to build one of the foundational skills. You can do things around phonics, around, say, vocabulary comprehension, things like that. So in the next slide, we're just going to play a quick video about Freedom so that you get an idea of what it is.
So I will stop sharing my screen.
We need to play the video, Dorette.
Oh, okay, sorry. Hang on. Is it this one?
Yes. Thanks. Thanks, Dorette. I can quickly share my screen and show you a little bit of demo of the platform. This is what it looks like on the web. So it makes for a better reading experience for a young child. You can search for books you like. I'm just going to search for Book Dash, and then you can look. You can find books that are from the Book Dash library on our platform. This is Way Smile, for instance, is a very popular story. You click on the story you want to read, and then you can read it on the platform. You can increase your size. You can see the pictures, and then you can, and then once you finish reading the story, you can get points for reading on the platform as well. And then you can do quizzes after reading stories. Similarly, you can do activities. There are skill-specific activities on the app, that are for the age that you're in. So every child who joins is asked to put in their age, and then based on the learning outcomes they should have met by that age, they're mapped to that level on the app, and that's where the AI comes into play here. And every day when you log on to the app, if you don't know what to do, your feed is different every day. And you have a set of stories that are on the app every day for you. And they are divided by audio, video, and text. So you can read stories, you can watch stories, and you can listen to stories as well, as you can see on these icons here. If you like a book, you can add them to your library. And that's a mark for us to know how much children actually love the content that's on the app. And I'm very happy to share that just from March this year onwards, we have enabled over 1 million reading minutes on Freedom, which is just fantastic, especially, when you see, and this is how we're trying to make reading matter in a country like India, right? By actually trying to quantify parts of it. So 1 million reading minutes is about 800 days of reading. Yeah, and it's massive. When you think about it, it sounds big. It is big. And Book Dash have been such excellent partners in this journey. You can share the screen again, Dorette. So the way we work with partners like Book Dash is to access, is to use stories from their library as a part of the Freedom Library. The app is free of cost, and you can download it from the App Store or from the Play Store. Register on your phone and then start using the app on the web as well. So as on today, we have over 2,600 stories on the app, close to 1,500 activities, and 150 original stories written by children who get inspired to write their own stories after seeing the stories that are on the app. Next slide, please. Next slide, Dorette. Or is it my network? Can you go one slide before, please? I think I have. Oh, so sorry. A couple of slides earlier. Yeah. Just give me a second. I'm just going to. Am I back? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Oh, I'm so sorry. I was in such a flow and network issues. Anyway, so when Book Dash and Freedom coming together has just been like a kind of a whoa, blow your mind kind of a moment for us. And especially when you see the data, it's pretty mind blowing. If you can go next, Dorette. So there are about 167 stories from Book Dash that we have on our platform. And if you see, there are about they have been viewed about 74,000 times, which is an insane amount of times a child has viewed a Book Dash story. This is just this year so far. It does not include everything that we've done in the last 5 years. And over close to 200,000 children have read stories from Book Dash on the platform just this year. If we go next. This kind of shows month-on-month traction, and we're able to see, how the number of times stories are viewed on Freedom kind of increase, with the months that go by, because children are finding stories that they're engaging with, they're liking. This is only about Book Dash, by the way. And then if we go next, we have also divided the stories by the time it would take a child of a certain age to read. So the stories are less than 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, and then stories that may take 5 to 10 minutes for a child to read. It honestly doesn't matter. It's just been, regardless of how much ever time a Book Dash story takes to read, children have been excited to read them. They've also been completing the book, which means they're not leaving the book halfway, which is a big indicator of how well children are loving the content. And this says a lot, right? Because the concern that we had was, how will children be able to relate to stories from other parts of the world, with children and families who look a little different than they are, and just fall in love with the story itself. And I'm so happy to say we've been proven wrong time and again, where children have fallen in love with stories. I have fallen in love with Book Dash stories. When I read Shonglu's Shoes for the first time, I was in love. And if you can go to the next slide, Dorette. These are so the total time that children have spent reading Book Dash stories on Freedom this year is about 2,800 hours, which is pretty significant. It is, and it's to even imagine a bunch of 3 to 12-year-olds reading for so many hours is something. And this is only Book Dash content, right? I mean, if you look at the only other content provider whose books are read perhaps more than Book Dash is that of Pratham Storyweaver. It's an indigenous Indian open source publishing platform, and I believe they were presenting last year at the Open Publishing Fest as well. And that's simply because of volume. There are more stories from Storyweaver compared to Book Dash on the Freedom platform. Next. So these are Freedom favorites. Means these are the Book Dash titles that have been read the most on the platform. And also is a big favorite. It's been read over 6,500 times by children on the platform. Amazing Daisy has been read about 6,300 times. A Dancer's Tale about 5,000 times. Next. A House for Mouse, Walking Together, and My Inside Weather. I was talking to Julia earlier, and My Inside Weather is such a beautiful surprise because it's a difficult book for parents to make sense of for their children, and it's been welcomed so much. In fact, you saw our, we also do live classes for children, and it's a very big part of the curriculum, especially to enable children to read about and talk about their emotions. And this book has been just absolutely priceless. And these are just some of the books on freedom. I mean, they're so close to each other. I can't tell you which book is better. My personal favorite is Shanglu Shoes, of course, as you know. And yeah, we're very excited by this partnership. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Sure, Aditi, that is a mouthful. I mean, I worked out that that a number of hours equates to 117 days of children who've read Bookdash books, which is quite mind-blowing. So thank you very much for sharing that with us and for for the work you do. It's so interesting. Again, like with Koen, I've got lots of questions, but I want to first just tell you about our third guest who couldn't make it today, who uses the Bookdash model differently from how both Freedom and Koen's organization uses it. So I'm just going to share my screen again and show you the website and give you a little bit of background. Just give me a second. Okay. I think you can all see the website for people on paper. So very briefly, we were contacted by an individual person. It's not an organization. There is now an organization called People on Paper, but a woman called Laika Kaji. She has ties with South Africa. She grew up here for part of her childhood and then also ties with the Netherlands, but ended up in Lebanon, in Beirut. And she heard about Bookdash and realized that it could be very useful for a need that she had identified in Lebanon. And the need that she had identified was that the children who are in the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon have no resources. And if they have resources, the resources are not relevant to them and they cannot identify with it because it doesn't speak to their experiences at all. So Laika then painstakingly went through our Bookdash manual, which is our guide where we detail in a very step-by-step way how to run a content creation event like a Bookdash. She found funding, and in very difficult socioeconomic circumstances, she also found creative volunteers, professional people in Beirut who joined her for 12 hours, and they made 4 books. So these are some of the photographs from the bookmaking events that they had in July this year. These images seem very familiar to me because that's exactly what a Bookdash kind of looks like. They created 4 books. How it's a little bit different from Bookdash is that when we have a book creation event, we don't prescribe to our creative volunteers what kind of stories we want or what the content should be. In this particular case, because it was for such a specific purpose and audience, they got some of the NGOs who work in the Palestinian refugee camps to come and talk to the creative volunteers beforehand to tell them about what are the conditions, what are things that should be avoided in books, what are things that should be included, what are the problems that the children are dealing with. So they got a very good briefing from people who are very aware of the conditions that the children are faced with. And 4 books were made using the Bookdash templates, using the Bookdash kind of design process, using everything. And we had a few interactions with Laika and with her head designer to answer questions that they had after working through the model. But they ran a very successful content creation event. Those are all the people who volunteered. It was difficult. There were fuel shortages, there were power cuts, I'm sure everybody knows that things in Lebanon are not easy at the moment. And despite that, they managed to make 4 brand new books that are now open sourced and can be used by anyone who thinks that they fit the need that a particular organization might be trying to address. That's Laika and the flowery pants in the middle. So yeah, she's very sorry to not be able to make today, but she's not well. And I will put her the web address to the people on paper in the chat if anybody wants to go and have a look at what they've done and just get a sense in more detail. But I think we can perhaps go over now. We've got 10 minutes left to some questions and comments. Julia?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Stuart. I think it's really nice to still tell the story. And my favorite thing about those examples of where people replicate the Book Dash model or use it to inspire another kind of bookmaking event is that the books they create are then almost always also open license, and they then travel the world in the same way our books did. And it's just this domino effect of increasing access to free content and content that others can use. So I'm sure Freedom and Bloom also might be interested in going onto the People on Paper website and seeing the books they've made. And we've had to date, I might get this wrong, Dorette, I'm trying to think how many events, replications we've had, probably about 10 or 11.
I wouldn't say 12, but yes.
Yeah. Of organizations who have followed the Book Dash model, been inspired by it, adapted it if needed, and created more open license books for their context. And we love to see people doing it. So if you feel excited and inspired and ready to go through the manual, you're welcome to. It's on our website, or you can get in touch with us to do that. Okay, great. We've got a few questions. I think initially one of them was for Bloom from Marizia in terms of exposure to language and the books, and how if Bloom has had an impact on the language development of the children, I think, if I've understood the question correctly. You feel free to just unmute and then...
Can I just clarify that what I was really asking was, if you're giving children experience of books and stories, then you do increase their language development, but they probably need specific instruction in order to crack the code, that is to kind of access how to read independently using phonics. So I just wondered whether there was any thoughts on that, whether that kind of teaching went alongside the books or just how that was managed, because I think what Adita was talking about was that there were phonics activities alongside the books. I wasn't clear whether Kern's work could include that or not. That was really what I was asking.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. That's helpful. Kern, I don't know if you are there and if you want to talk about that aspect of Bloom at all.
Yeah, Bloom is very much different compared to Freedom in that way that we are not trying to bring a learning solution. We're trying to bring a book publishing platform to everyone without computer skills, which then means that our own colleagues that work in remote languages that basically no one in the world cares about, that they too can have books that are then either digital or printed. Most of my colleagues, and that's kind of probably what some of you want to hear, most of my colleagues all focus on printed books. And so they use the same Bloom platform to bring printed books in those vernacular languages to people all around the world. My team didn't want to repeat what everyone was doing. And we said, you know what? I do believe in printed books and they will never go away, but I think they should be sort of complemented with digital versions. And then on top of that, add audio to the vernacular as well as to the English, so that these kids that have to bridge from learning to speak their vernacular at home and then learning to speak and read in English, that they both have these talking books at their disposal. We are currently breaching into a new part of the Bloom Reader where we can add activities. And so the whole idea of bringing phonics activities on the same platform is something which is very new. And we're basically the only one in the world currently that is trying to go that way, but very, very different than Freedom. Bloom is open source, Bloom is free, and so that also makes us very, very different.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting distinction to make as well. With Bookdash as well, we see ourselves as publishers and content creators, and we put that out into the world so that others can then use that to support learning programs. And sometimes those learning programs are on varying levels of structures. They might be reading for enjoyment programs like Nali Bali in South Africa, where it's around exposure and creating a love for reading, or it might be aligned to a curriculum more. And it also depends which age group you're focused on. And so for us, again, as Kun was speaking, I was thinking there's just endless possibilities of adaptations and audio versions and digital versions and print books. And it is useful for organizations to focus their work in one direction, which again is why the open license is just so incredibly helpful, because it means that everything can be done, but it doesn't have to be done by one single organization, and the books can travel. And we've got a question from Sam and Corsi, which asks, who is the primary target market? And it's to both of you. So maybe Aditi, you can speak first, and then Kun of each of the
Sure.
projects.
So for us, the primary target market is a child who goes to an English medium school, either any kind of English medium school in India, who may or may not be a first generation learner in their family. And we're looking at children between the ages of 3 to 12. Currently, we're only working in India. We're not expanding to other countries. There are enough and more children in India to serve, especially for making reading a possibility for them. So that is our current target market.
Yeah, I think for us, Bloom has been around for probably 15 years, where only the last 5 years we've started to focus on digital versions of these Bloom books. Big organizations like World Vision, Save the Children, but also governments have found Bloom to be a way to empower their not so techy advanced publishers, writers, to just use Bloom software to create very simple books. It was always something that I just hated about Bloom, because I was an InDesign user. I taught a yearbook class here at our international school, and I loved to have a tool that would allow me to make very nice looking books. And Bloom was basically completely the opposite. You were not able to have a layer. And so I had to learn my way around, but I also very, very strongly believe in empowering local people. And so that's why we teach Bloom at a teacher's college, which is one of our main targets. Teachers in the country that can learn Bloom, that as soon as they have a laptop, they have to invest nothing. They can use a free software tool, and then they can start to create their own books in their own language. The whole idea about these own languages, I think it's wonderful what I've seen happen in Bookdash, where some of their titles, some of your titles were translated into, I think, up to 10 languages. I think that's amazing, but it normally involves very, very highly skilled people to do that. When it comes down to Bloom, everyone literally with a 2-hour training can do it. And that's kind of where our market isn't a market, it's just an open world where everyone is free to use it.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing, and it's lovely to see the two different approaches from just the two organizations we've heard from today. As Dorette said, we know of over 100 such people we could have asked to come chat about how they use Bookdash Books and how the open license supports their work. And I really love that aspect of Bloom too. Kuna also was frustrated by the lack of ability, but then you realize if someone doesn't have design skills, really a picture and text and the ability to translate or adapt from the books that are already on the library is incredibly empowering, and to put those books into local languages. I think that's all we've got time for, but I just want to read one question or comment here from someone who we affectionately know as Granny Joe in Taipei, who Dorette introduced briefly earlier, but not everyone might have heard, who runs programs in local libraries. And one of her favorite books that she ran an activity around is You, Yes, You. And she's noticed that Vilna, who's the designer, is in the audience. And I think that that's also an awesome example of why we have these events, so that, you know, we can make it real for everyone. And I don't know if, yeah, Vilna's just replied, but basically, yeah, if you haven't read You, Yes, You, it's on the Book Dash website. It's a very interactive book. The kids are on an adventure. They're instructed to turn the book upside down, run to the next page. It's quite an advanced kind of literacy skills book, but it's very interactive. And in Taipei, in a library there, led by Granny Joe, the kids dressed up as ninjas and role played the books. And I think that that's for us to know that, and for the creators who, we mustn't forget, give their time and talent for free. All of the books are made by creative volunteers who do this for the love of it and to know the impact that it has. So clearly not just in South Africa, but all over the world. And I think that's just a wonderful note to end on. I'm going to pass over to Dorette to wrap up.
Thanks, everyone. It's incredibly disturbing how quickly an hour passes when we're busy thinking about and hearing about and talking about what obviously is important for all of us, which is free reading materials that can just be used to address all the big challenges that we're faced with in terms of literacy worldwide. So I want to thank Kun and Aditi, and also Laika, who couldn't make it, but for their willingness to share their stories and to enlighten us about the work that you do. It's amazing work, and we'll be in contact to find out a little bit more, because some of my questions are still burning. Thank you very much for everyone in the audience who gave an hour of your time. To the South Africans in the audience, I want to say good luck with the rest of the day and our load shedding situation that we have at the moment, which is an electricity and power problem for you in the rest of the world. And for people who are heading off to bed, have a good night's sleep. For people who are somewhere in the middle of their day, hope you have a lovely day further. And thank you very much, everyone, for your support.